If you're watching and you're interested in venture capital, then I suspect you might have any number of different opinions about venture capital firms and about venture capital in general. They might range from sort of just thinking about how VCs often are providing these big checks to companies that eventually exit, and there's all the excitement, all the way down to just the very difficult process, and even getting a meeting with a good venture capital firm. Well, I have one of the real icons in this industry, Jake Seid, who's been, doing this for quite some time. We're going to ask him some hard questions and learn from Jake, and hopefully you'll stick around. If you're interested in venture capital, interested in tech, interested in cyber and AI, you are in the right place. Stick around. I think you're going to enjoy the discussion. Hi, this is Ed Amoroso. I want to welcome you to a new series where we'll be learning from and gaining insight from the Ballistic Venture Partners, an amazing group of technologists. I've had the great honor the last couple of years of really helping them with research and doing some writing. So we thought it'd be a good idea to just get the partners and get them on camera. We're going to talk to Jake now a little bit about his thoughts on the market, on technology, and on just some trends that he has great insight into. Jake, it's wonderful to see you. I'm looking forward to picking your brain here a little bit.
Yeah, great to see you too, Ed. Thanks for having me.
You've been doing this a long time. This is really, I try
25
to think
years.
about people who know this. You come to mind immediately. Tell us a little bit about your journey to where you are today.
Yeah, I really started as an engineer. I did my undergrad and master's at MIT and double E and CS, and very passionate about how technology could have a big positive impact. I was fortunate to be part of a startup within Cisco that became the fastest 0 to 1 billion business. And then was fortunate to be the youngest person on the team to launch Lightspeed Venture Partners. Spent over 11 years there. That's how I learned venture capital. And then got together with a great group of folks here at Ballistic to really double down on cybersecurity. And why? Well, for me, a core value is doing good and doing well. And I just see and we know that cybersecurity now is existential to our way of life. You can't get an operation that saves your life. You can't visit your family if cybersecurity doesn't work. And it's only becoming more existential with every day. And on the other side, there's an opportunity to really create big companies. You have multiple 100 billion market cap companies in cyber, and I think that's only going to expand as the TAM continues to grow.
Almost a running joke right now is that if you want to get a meeting with an investor, you better have AI in your name somewhere. Tell me what you think. Is that a meme, or is it maybe in cyber? Is the confluence of cyber and AI, is that an assumed kind of technical role that you would have when you're looking at a prospect? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, AI is very important, obviously, for the future of cybersecurity. And there are kind of two general ways to think about it. Using AI to help you do cybersecurity better, and then bringing cybersecurity to AI. So at the highest level, those are kind of the two theme areas that we look at. Now, AI is evolving quickly, and a year and a half ago, we talked about generative AI, but in fact, I started very early in bringing AI to cybersecurity with discriminative AI, and I was a Series A investor in abnormal security, and abnormal, again, wasn't using Gen AI, using kind of the earlier version of AI to solve a very important problem in email security. Now we have Gen AI, and now of course, we have agentic AI. And so AI is going to continue to evolve very, very quickly. How we use AI for security, bucket one, and how we secure AI, bucket two, is going to continue to evolve because AI is evolving through these various architectures that are having a profound impact on how we do things.
Seems like the two dimensions you and I have both watched, as to your point around abnormal, watched companies like that company, using AI to improve the way they build a control. Like abnormal does that wonderful modeling and learning of your tendencies and stuff. I thought it was amazing. So far ahead of the game. That's one dimension. But now it seems like, Jake, most of the discussion is around guardrails, runtime protections, visibility into the AI models and systems and apps, almost like flipping the screen, the concept from using AI for security to now using security for AI. I would imagine you're getting proposals on this probably on your desk every day. Do you see that sort of shift a little bit toward guardrail?
Yeah, we've actually been at Ballistic active investors in thinking about, the guardrails, which we might define as security for AI. And so we've invested in that area along multiple dimensions. Companies like Witness,
Yeah.
which help you ensure the safe use of AI by your employees, by your workforce. Companies like Noma, which secure the AI and data development lifecycle from build time to runtime, again, from LLMs, but also to machine learning, to agentic AI, to your business agents, um, to other areas that we think about. Companies like Concentric that ensure that data that is proprietary isn't going into these LLMs, or that the wrong information isn't coming back. And so, the appropriate guardrails are important as long as they don't sacrifice utility of the AI. And so I think that's a key thing that we think about when looking for a great cybersecurity startup. Is it providing guardrails? Is it providing security? But is it also enabling business? And if you look at Witness and Noma and Concentric, they actually are business enablers as they go and secure AI.
Jake, when these folks walk into your office and they're pitching, what percentage are you looking at the idea or sort of the area? And what percentage are you looking at the individual, sort of their passion and their background and their drive? Is it 50-50, or is there one thing? I know there's no formula, but you've been at this quite some time. I'm curious what goes through your mind.
Yeah, it's an age-old question, the team or the market.
Yeah.
Um, Look, I think there is, as you said, no scientific formula that you use. You're really looking at those two things as kind of the primary questions, right? You know, a lot of times also the teams that we meet, some will be repeat entrepreneurs and they have a group of folks, and we certainly have invested in many repeat entrepreneurs. But some are very young entrepreneurs that are building their first company and they don't have a complete team, but they have a core insight. And they actually do have a background that lends themselves to believe that you could really build a strong team with them in going to execute on a large market opportunity. But I think it really is this combination of both. And you can think about it as weights on a scale. If there's an incredibly strong repeat entrepreneur, you might take more risk on the market. Why? Because your bet is great entrepreneurs find great markets, even if their first one is off. If it's a less experienced team, you'll place more weight on the market. So think about it more as a scale with different weights as opposed to fixed percentages.
Do you think this is really something different here? I mean, you and I have both lived through transformations. Like, remember, the web was kind of a big
Yeah,
deal. I would say
yeah.
mobility, pretty big deal. And I'm wondering, is this transition to AI, I mean, where it's real and we're really deploying these things, is this maybe one of the bigger things you or I will look back and say, man, that was one of the biggest things? Or is it maybe something that, I talked to a number of people who kind of roll their eyes, think, a lot of fluff. I'm curious where you stand on the
Oh, yeah,
spec.
yeah. Look, I think in my career, AI is the biggest transformation.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I was a student at MIT, we had very prominent, AI professors way back then, because AI is not a new thing. It had actually, people were working on it decades before I was a
Minsky,
student.
right? Minsky was
Yeah,
there.
Minsky
Yeah.
was a
Right.
professor there, and
Right.
I was wondering whether or not I should take Minsky's class, and I decided not to take it because it's like the joke about AI was it'll be ready next year, and it's always next year, right? Every year it's next year, and it just took an additional 25 years since I graduated for it to continue to mature. But that's how technology works, right? Things hit an inflection where everything comes together. Right? Quantum is going through that phase right now, where at some point it's going to hit a knee in the curve and it's going to change. the world dramatically. But I'd say AI is clearly, the biggest technological transformation of my lifetime. And it's so important to cybersecurity because of multiple reasons. One, what the adversary can do with with AI. Right now, it's not just humans that scale an attack. Now I could have swarms of agents attacking at the speed of light. And now humans can no longer defend against AI. So now you need AI to defend against AI. How we think about the governance of AI and the safety around AI, we don't have all the answers. And it's also hard to have the answers because it is changing so quickly. But I think that's what creates such a tremendous opportunity, to build great companies for entrepreneurs, to start companies at the intersection of rethinking what it means around, again, cybersecurity for AI and AI for cybersecurity.
Well, one thing I struggle with, and oftentimes in looking at companies that I know you guys are really digging into, is this question of whether, with the new use case of AI, let's say you're throwing a model at customer care or something, and you're worried about hallucination or something. I always think, is it so new that we need new companies, or is this a use case where companies you guys have already funded or that we're already using can just, in some sense, adjust their existing platform, like governance, for example, is something that we all know how to do. Does AI demand that we have new AI governance platforms, or can my existing governance wrap around the new use case? I find myself scratching my head on that one because I agree this is really new. And does it mean we have to reinvent platforms that I've got now? Do you think about that as you're listening to pitches and
Oh
coaching?
yeah, yeah, that's a
What's
that's
your
a
what's your
that's a
thoughts
very
there?
core consideration, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So one, it's you have the new company that says, "Hey, we see this new problem of AI or agents, and we're doing just that, and we're starting fresh to do just that." You have startups that have been funded by us or others that see AI and agentic AI as a very natural extension. Then you have late stage startups, Series G, E, F companies that see it as an extension. And then you have public companies that see it as an
yeah.
extension. And I think something that,
Palo, Cisco, companies like that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And one of the things that we think about is there is a key difference between the architectural shift to cloud and SaaS versus the architectural shift to AI. When there was an architectural shift to SaaS, the incumbent on-prem vendors did not have any advantages. They were all disadvantaged. They had to do a fundamental architectural change while they supported their legacy approach and software. In AI, incumbents have an advantage along an important vector, which is data. And so if you're an existing company that's been working in an area for years or a decade, you might have a corpus of proprietary data that allows you to use an off-the-shelf LLM in a way that would be just very hard for a startup because they have to jumpstart their approach to data and how they gather data and leverage data so that you don't hallucinate. And by the way, in cybersecurity, I'd argue the bar is highest for data quality. The bar is highest for not wanting hallucination. If you're creating a photo or a marketing template, there's a lot of wiggle room for creative interpretation. When you're deciding should this person have access or not, there's no room, right? If you're blocking people that need to get their work done, nobody is going to use that product and you will not get any funding. And so the vector of data becomes important on so many of those dimensions, including is it an opportunity for a startup or does the incumbent have the advantage? Is it something that allows you to have a high fidelity, or will data quality cause your product to suffer as a startup? Even if there was no incumbent, right? Would you just struggle out of the gate? So that's one of the key things that we think about, in answer to your question.
very sensible. Jake, do you ever worry that we're creating a monster with AI? Like, you ever get thoughtful and think, wow, can these things run amok? Like, I know that's part of our job to build guardrails, but I find myself thinking about that from time to time. Like, my dad was an early pioneer in AI. He was at UPenn doing
Yeah.
early cellular automata. At the time, Minsky was doing his work. So I've been thinking about this forever, but wondered, are there some existential issues that ever enter into your work, both as a technologist and also as an investor?
Yeah, I think about that in two ways. One, with every, big technology, it could be used for good or ill, right?
Yeah,
Dynamite, right?
true.
Dynamite can be used for good or ill.
Well put.
Nuclear energy, good or ill.
You're
And
right.
so as human beings, we grapple with this and, AI can be used for good or ill. It's not the first time. Secondly, the cat is out of the bag, or the genie's out of the bottle, right? Whatever metaphor you want to use. So it's not a question of, you know, um, what will happen? Will we need to do, will we need to think about safety? Will we need to think about abuse? Of course, we'll need to think about safety. Of course, we need to think about abuse. Of course, we need to think about how we could use this in ways that make us as humans more productive and make the world a better place. And so, again, I'd argue it's nothing new, but it's something we have to think about both sides because it's happening. You can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Well, I think that that is absolutely true. The genie is certainly out. I mean, these guardrails and runtime protections and other things that we do, it feels like the cybersecurity problems that you and I and others have worried about for so many years, like the CIA triad, is probably going to adjust somewhat. Like with agentic AI, we've moved away from like these passive tools like you can think of ChatGPT as sort of like this passive answer machine that generates stuff to these active entities that are out working. Do you see a lot of investment in agentic AI in some sense, redefining society and business and government? Seems pretty exciting. Am I barking up the right tree on that?
Yeah, and that's why I think, agentic is another important shift in, our evolution of AI from generative, right? Just as generative was an important shift from kind of the discriminative AI, but agentic really takes action. And we are going to rely on agents to take more and more action as, we continue to mature the technology. And when action gets taken, there's existential consequences and along many dimensions. And so that's why again I think the genie is out of the bottle where there's a reason why agents are going to be used. It's going to have an opportunity to really advance humanity and our productivity and our ability to innovate and the ability for anybody to innovate and do something good for the world. But at the same time, then you have to think about how do you enable it to do that safely. And I think that's where the opportunity for entrepreneurs and investors is in thinking about that and providing those guardrails.
It's very inspiring to hear some positive messaging around AI, right? You flip on the podcasters and it's all pretty negative. So I'm
Yeah,
more on
I
the
think it
positive
really,
side. I'm with you.
we have to consider, the important part that, this is a way for us to, improve humanity. There really is opportunity there. But, we have to be mindful of, hey, it could be used for ill, and how do we just guard against that, like we've done, with technologies throughout the history of humanity.
Well, you keep doing all the good work you're doing, Jake. If I go back, we didn't have time here to recount all of the technologies that you've personally enabled through your career, but you got a nice run. I hope you got another 30, 40 years left in you. We could use you doing this for a while. So I hope you keep doing it.
Knock on wood. And I just encourage, the entrepreneurs listening, um, really, even though there's a lot of noise in the space, there is a lot of opportunity. And really think about, how you bring something unique to the table, across the team, across your approach, across how you think about the data that you bring to the problem you're solving. And I think people will find there's still a lot to be done.
Maybe there's some really amazing idea and entrepreneur that will be inspired by our discussion today, and we can look back on
I
it
hope
and
so.
say that we did.
I hope so.
I'll get an assist. There we go. That'll be good. Jake, it's always a delight to catch up with you. Thanks for wonderful discussion, and let's try and get back together in a few months. We can catch up on progress then.
Likewise, Ed. Thanks for having me again.
Jake. And for everyone else watching, thanks for watching our series, and I hope you look forward to our next video.